In this video, we'll be painting an Ultra Forge Demon Prince. See, there's a lot of nice little details on the figure. Obviously, this is more of a blood demon type of a figure. Some really nice wings that fit on here and are very stable. There's several different options: heads, hands, weapons. I chose this. I thought the face was very interesting. So when we are painting this one, I'm going to focus mostly on the flesh tone, the wings, the face, the horns, less so on the armor and the weapon, because I don't want to turn this into a non-metallic metal demonstration. We will work with those a little bit, but again, the focus is on other things like the flesh and the horns, the nails here. So there's a lot of fun subtle color things that are going on. And speaking of the colors, they're right out here on the palette. Got a variety of Reapers, Valeos, and even a GW color. I'm going to move from my reds all the way over to the greens. I start out with some Imperial Purple from Reaper, Cavalry Brown and Parasite Brown from Vallejo, this Vomit Brown from GW, Leather Brown, Deep Yellow and Ivory, and then got some cooler colors here. This USMC Highlight, also a Vallejo from the Panzer Aces series, then Verdigris, German Uniform Green, and Olive Drab. So some of these colors on this end of the spectrum, see they find their way into the armor and weapons, and a lot of the purples, browns and reds, that all finds its way into the wings and the flesh tones. Now I prime this. I have the colors arranged on the palette in 3 primary groups. First one I'm going to talk about are the Filbert brushes. This is a all-purpose brush. Has this nice broad surface to cover the miniature quickly, but you've got this rounded, tapered edge. Works really well for blending, especially on a larger figure like this, where you've got the wings and some of these bigger surfaces on the flesh. You'll see us utilize that blending. Also, one other item about this brush is that chisel edge, and that can come in really handy, especially when we're trying to drag the brush over, say, something like the horns to do some of our shaded base coat, or you can even use it to do a nice straight line. This is American Painter. This is one of the more cost-effective brands. Not a bad brush, especially for that price. These Filberts come in sizes between 2 and 8. I usually stick with number 4 and number 6. This is a 6. We have some 4s over here. This next brush that I'm going to cover, it's actually a craft brush. It's a number 8 round. See, when they're new, not a bad point, especially when you consider there's 10 of them in this pack, and a price like that means about 50 cents a brush. And even when a brush starts to show some age, it's kind of worn down like this, still a use for it, because look at this base with all this rough texture. Well, you just take that brush and just jam it right in there. You can get all the paint where you need it, just jamming the brush right in there. Again, it saves your other higher quality brushes. This is the last set we'll talk about, and these are the liner brushes. Prefer these over spotters because you can see you got this longer bristles. Point is the same, so you get this 10-0, but because the bristles are probably well over twice as long, it's going to hold more pigment, more liquid, and you have a little more flexibility. You won't have to go back to the palette quite as often. That was American Painter, kind of at the lower end of the price scale. This is a Winsor Newton but price-wise, this still falls halfway in between the American Painter and the Series 7. So this is the Kolinsky Sable from Winsor & Newton. You can barely read that label because this has seen a lot of action, a lot of paint piled up on this handle. But the tip still in pretty decent shape because we used all these other brushes to do that heavy lifting. All the dirty work done with these lets this stay pristine for longer. Last thing I'm going to talk about is this disposable palette. This one right here. That's a nice size to work with, and you got 40 sheets. You get these at art stores, craft stores. I've gotten these on Amazon. Best part about this is when it comes to cleanup after a day of work, just pick up this sheet, pull it, rip it off, throw it away, and you're done. Cleanup does not get any easier than that. I just wanted to do a quick little exercise here to show you some of the reds in these flesh tones that we're gonna do, because this might be somewhat different mix than some people think of for red. But what I've got over here is the purple, the cavalry brown, the parasite brown, and the vomit brown. I'll just show you these in a little color swatch. I'll start off with the imperial purple. I'm going to start to put some of the cavalry brown, and what this does is it's going to make a nice deep burgundy here. That forms the basis of a nice set of darker colors. I'm going to go straight to the cavalry brown. Not only does it get lighter, but you can see it get a little warmer. And see, I like to do these little palettes within a palette here. You're going to see me do this an awful lot. And it gets lighter, but more towards the orange. So I guess the idea is, yeah, it's a reddish flesh tone, but as it gets lighter, I don't want it to get too pink. But I don't want it to be pumpkin orange either. And this tends to tone it down versus some of those more fiery oranges that you see. It's getting lighter and lighter, and as we kind of do some of our final lights, that's where a little bit of that vomit brown comes in. And this is what helps to keep your bright highlights definitely from turning pink, because I'm pretty sure on your big nasty demon prints, white or pink highlights are probably not what you're looking for. And you could go even lighter than this if you wanted to. I say mixing a little bit of the white in with that. So if you really wanted to get even that much brighter, so this way this quick little swatch here. Just wanted to show you how some of these color mixes are going to go. Especially you can see on the backs of the wings. But here, see on the front part of the wings, well, that was a little different story. It's more of the purple. Then obviously it became a little more cooler, that we didn't warm it up quite as much as this. Well, that's where you actually will use a tiny bit of the verdigris. as we add a little more of that. It's not turning pink, but it's a little bit more of a cooler purple color, but it's the idea is that it's almost in a way reflecting this bluish marble here. So this is more for the underside of the wings. Top side, entirely different range of colors. And I like to do that with things that have wings. It keeps it from getting boring, but also it shows that, well, you're reflecting the environment around the miniature. So we sort of start off with the same color here, but by the time we get to the opposite end of the value scale, whole different look. Hopefully that little swatches are helpful as we now move on to our shaded base coat. It's time to get things started on our shaded base coat. And the idea of the shaded base coat is to take as big a brush as possible and cover as much of this surface as you can, basically to get rid of this gray primer, or white, or black, however you like to prime yours. I want to get it away from the gray, didn't want it to be white, I want it to have colors, even if they're not necessarily the final colors, some kind of color in every area. So I'll start by having a few color mixes out on the palette. Sometimes you just have to kind of go back in and put some more colors out there. But I'm even going to have some olive drab out here too. It's a nice, just gives it a little different tone. And with some of these mixes together, I am going to start to apply some colors here. Don't necessarily have to begin with the red. You could do the armor first and then take some of the straight cavalry brown and let that all start to blend together a little bit. Now also, something else that can help your blending is glaze medium. That's something you'll probably see me use every so often here. What that does is keeps your paint wetter on the miniature as well as on the palette, and that'll let you blend wet into wet even more. But I don't think we'll need it here because I think the paint's going to flow pretty well. Flow improver, also another thing you could use. So I'm going to say that's my wings for right now, but before that dries I'm going to go back into that with some lighter colors, but I'm just going to shift gears around here to a few different spots. I might even throw a little bit of purple into that mix. And see here, even in these sections, remember I was talking about the kind of the older beat up craft brush. This is kind of a perfect place to use that. I can just kind of jam the paint in here. I'm not really worried about keeping things within the lines. It's more about coverage. So we're starting to get towards the end of that warmer color mixture, which again, according to the swatch, is that top band. There, you just about got your red settled down. Sometimes this is going to twirl out of the camera view. I apologize for that in advance. Sometimes when I'm being aggressive and just jamming in the paint, I actually will brace the miniature against the palette like this. This is a resin figure, so it's not too heavy. Okay, so now I'm ready to kind of switch gears and work on the inside of the wings, and that's it's a different color set. It's going to be more, see, I'm introducing the purples here. Doesn't seem so different, but there is definitely going to be a difference between the inside of the wings and the outside. So I'm going to just brace it against the palette so that I can just scumble that paint to all the crevices. Same thing on the other side. And I don't even mix. Sometimes I don't even mix the color. I just grab what there is and let it mix on the miniature. That's just about it for that first coat of the red. But now I can start to think about, see how this is a little bit more dry. I can start to think about, well, what are my lights going to look like on these wings? And again, brush held out on the end. Try to take advantage of the chisel edge. We're going to do a few things. We're going to drag the brush along the surface. This is not a dry brush. You can see how much paint there is on here. But because you got this rounded edge on the filbert brush, that's going to let me, I'm just hitting a few of these higher areas. You could also hold it this way and drag your brush like that. So you can see how there's a little more color here. I still consider this a base coat, but even at this early juncture, we're starting to introduce some shading. So I see here on the muscles of these arms, on the shoulders, on the back. Here at the edge of the wing. So here you can do the same thing down on the legs. So right here on that calf muscle. Plenty of paint, not a dry brush. I refer to it as damp brushing because it sort of looks like a dry brush. Well, let's see, what I'm doing is just dragging the paint across the fingers, just letting the paint do some of this early blending. Who knows, maybe you end up covering most of this with subsequent glazes or whatever. That's okay. All I want to do is get the best sense of where my light colors are going to be, where my dark colors are going to be, center of interest, which, as we talked about in the beginning, is the face, almost always is. So I'm not going to work too much of this warmer cavalry brown into this part of the wings, saving it mostly for the outside, but you can still see there's already a temperature difference here, cooler versus warmer, and that's what we want to do. So I'm not going to put so much of the cavalry brown here down at the end of the feet. I will up here let this get somewhat warmer, since this is not the parts that aren't facing the floor. Got the back of this hand here. Just a little bit, and let that go. And now, I think actually I'm going to throw a little bit of the flow improver out. Just a little bit of it. And at this point now, I'm going to think about some of the parasite brown and introducing that. And if you see what I'm doing here, so I got the cavalry brown, and I'm just it's almost like a color swatch. Well, it's a way to predict the future. I can see by mixing these together gradually with more of this, I can see, well, what's this going to look like? And it gives me a place I can backtrack. I say, ooh, geez, I got too light there, too warm, too fast. If you've got the colors already kind of pre-mixed out on the palette, then you can go back. You're gonna hit the reset button a little bit. I'm using that feathered stroke again, but you can start to see how we're already starting to get some lights and shadows on this wing. It's very early in the process yet, but already getting some shading here. Later on, as I paint this figure, there may be times where I just do one wing, and then let that dry, and I advance to somewhere else and just do the other wing, either off camera to try and conserve on time, because these two wings, you can see I'm doing the exact same thing on both wings. There's nothing that I'm doing on one, it's not going to happen on the other. Same thing goes for the interior wing too. So I'm reaching into that flow improver just a tiny bit, not a lot. Try and use the edge of the brush to go right in there. Same thing here. But as we look at, I'm just trying to start to think about what's the future of this color. What's this going to look like several layers from now, several steps from now. Okay. Now I have to think about adding even more of the parasite brown back to the wings here. It seems like, because I am right-handed, that it's easier for me to get this right wing into the camera view. The left-hand one I have to sort of contort and twist around. So if I'm going to focus on one wing, it'll be probably the wing on the right-hand side. I guess as I do this, I want you to keep in mind that whatever dark colors there are on these wings, that is by no means the final dark. There's going to be a bunch of glazes over the top of that, and we'll cover that later. So back to some of these areas of the flesh tone on the legs. Up towards the shoulders here. Like so. Just touch the face a little bit, even though it's going to be mostly transformed into a whole different shade of colors. To the hand. And here on this part of the left leg and stopping here at this ankle joint. Now it's time to think about incorporating some of this vomit brown in with the parasite brown, which is about here on our little swatch. And just as I did before, start here, work my way down. There's plenty of paint on that brush. And trying to use that chisel edge to my advantage so that I can do things like that. Just want to get a little bit lighter up here. Now these, see how I haven't really done much with the shoulder? I've kind of left that alone. I'm just thinking that that's not going to catch as much light, nowhere near as much as the tops of these wings. So that's what that has not seen a whole lot more shading since our early layers. Even on the legs, it's the similar thing. Now here, little different story. I've been putting more shading here because, well, this surface pretty much points straight up towards the light source. May not be as close to the light source as, say, the wings are, but still the way that's pointing, that kind of demands that it gets at least some of these lighter colors. This part of the shoulder is going to see some more of our light color, like that. The hand, some of the knuckles here, this knuckle, got the hand holding the weapon. Yeah, a little light set, so just a little bit, all of a sudden, creates so much shape, and you create shapes by adding these lights and darks. That's how it works. And I don't even worry if there are any little striations here at this point. I'm not worried because, well, we have glazing to do. Because we want to also have some nice, deep, rich darks. So back to the vomit brown, parasite brown. And with each step lighter that I go, obviously I'm thinking, okay, where are my lightest lights gonna go? Go back to this again. And I think, as you can see, we're getting a lot lighter, but it's not like a really intense orange. He's not a fire demon. If I want it to be bright, brilliant orange, I would use, I'd throw fluorescent oranges on there or something. But in this case, definitely not what I'm after. Shift it back this way. And I'm trying to take advantage of that part about the tip that I mentioned. See, let's see, here we go. I'm trying to stroke like that. Again, there's plenty of paint on this brush. Just trying to take advantage of its shape. And I'm going to throw some lighter lights down here on these parts of the legs that just catch so much light. Continue this way. Onto these knuckles. Now, if you wanted to use, a smaller brush in some of these areas, that's perfectly acceptable. Don't force yourself. Like if you feel more comfortable doing this. No, there's nothing wrong with that. Awesome. Some flow improver here. I prefer to use the bigger filbert brush, especially for these opening stages of the figure. It's my preference. It's what I'm comfortable with. But you may be comfortable with something else, and that's fine. You can substitute other colors for these colors if you want. If you don't have the exact color, it's more about just finding something that is kind of a close approximation. That's all. So let's say you're more comfortable doing this. Well, that's fine. There's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with that. And don't be afraid also to use your finger to blend if you want. I'm just going to go a few more lighter layers, dipping into that vomit brown more and more. This is my lightest light. In the final stages of this, when we're doing the final details, we'll probably mix some of the ivory into this to get some final really bright booming highlights, but that's not what this is about at this point. That's about as bright as I can get with those highlights. So I'm up to almost pure vomit brown. Just a few shots there. One or two maybe on some of these knuckles. And then that's it. Now the inside of the wings, I'm going to leave those alone right now. But I do have some colors out on the palette since I've got my vomit brown all kind of mixed up nice. Let's think about the horns. And he's got these 4 sets of horns. Letting this cover over parts of the armor too, no big deal. Because guess what? A lot of these same colors are going to go on the armor, at least initially. And the other reason why I did not want to get too much involved with the wings is the inside of the wings is because I'm doing this. And I run the risk of hitting the inside of those wings. I can paint the inside of the wings a little bit easier without hitting this. This is kind of just the opposite. It's much more difficult to not hit the wings when I'm doing this. Just all I want to do is get color down in here. Now, a lot of this maybe you can't see because it's just all in shadow, or it's covered by another part of the miniature. That's okay. But what I wanted to show, let's take some of this, around a little bit of the white, and even while the paint is wet, think about what parts of these the horns are going to be lighter. Not final highlights or anything like that. I just want to, okay, do I want these horns to be lighter here and get dark out into the end? That seems what just a habit of mine. Some people do it the opposite way. The horns are darker near nearest to the head, and then they get lighter as they move away from the head. So okay, I just wanted to do this little bit of work on the horns, and it's definitely time to dry off everything, put some colors back out on the palette, and we will be back for more of the shaded base coat. So now that the wings are dry and a lot of the skin, I can start to work on some of the armor and the weapon. Got my colors for that over here: the leather brown, the German uniform green, verdigris, yellow, the ivory, and some of the Marine Corps highlight. I also have some of my other skin colors out here because you want to reflect some of those into the armor space. So I'm going to start off relatively simple with the leather brown, every so often mixing in a little bit of the uniform green. And I'm going to spread this around onto each of the armor pads. I think that you've got the gauntlet on each arm, and these two armor pieces on each leg. There are some straps on this as well. I'm not going to do too much. I'm just going to throw a quick basic brown onto those as I run across those. And just like we did with the flesh, trying to cover up as many surfaces as I can. Get rid of that primer. Be very nice once all that primer is completely gone and we're just looking at color. And same principle as with, say, the wings and the flesh tone. The important thing is to kind of decide, well, where are my lights and darks going to go? Which part of this does the light catch well? Which part does it really not affect at all? Which part is going to be in shadow because of something, say, cast by one of the wings? And you can generally tell by as you spin your miniature around, and if the wing is casting a shadow to you as you're trying to paint it, well, you probably want to make sure that you think about working that in as a shadow in your painting too. So I'm going to keep these straps for right now. I'm going to keep these as simple as possible. We'll do a few little things to differentiate those from the rest of the flesh tone. I think I just about have some of the basic colors now onto those armor pads. So I'm gonna leave that for now and think about the loincloth. Doesn't have a whole lot on it, and I will get some purple into this, and that Reaper Imperial Purple, And that's going to go right here. And I think I'm actually going to extend that up to the armor strap there. This piece of cloth that comes up and over the hips. Right up through here. I'll even reflect a little bit of this onto some of the darker areas of those armor plates. And I think that's just about got that covered. I'm going to take this same color now, and that's what I'm going to use on the talons on the ends of the wings and on his feet too. So down here, going to work with some of that purple / brown. And with that, I think we finally, at last, have all that primer is gone. So what I'll do is, I think I'm going to experiment with some verdigris tossed into that mix. Right now I'm waiting for the armor to dry just a little bit, and as I wait for that, I'm just going to throw some of this color on anything that's a toenail, fingernail, claw, whatever you'd like to refer to it as, and it's also for here. And yeah, anywhere I see somewhere that needs some paint, I'll just throw this in there too. Let's get this last toenail on that foot. I think that has all the toenails covered, and these on the top. You can see this is it's kind of a gray, very grayish purple. It's not very bright at all. Well, it's because the flesh tone is pretty bright. There's a lot of bright colors there. I don't need another really bright color right on top of that. So there's a little bit more of verdigris mixed in, and we'll make this cloth just a little bit lighter. Also working on that strap. Same thing with some of these nails here. So the ends are going to be a little lighter than where they are on the roots. I'm also going to take a little bit of this, and I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of purple on that blade. So I'm going to take some of this color while it's here and inject that into the mixture on my blade, and even a few areas on the armor. I just want to see how dry is that. Okay, that's still want that to be a little more dry, so that means I'm going to work elsewhere. I can go into even some more verdigris, just like we did before. Remember with the flesh tone, how we had that whole swirling mass of color on the palette. Kind of the same thing here. We see where we started to the middle, now getting lighter. That's kind of the beauty of these palettes, is that you can see where you've been, where you're going to go. So you throw even a little more of the purple there, but also I'm going to try and get some here on loincloth. one of the reasons that I'm using this color, particularly here, is it's on that inner part of the wings. And I use some purplish grays here too. So it's all about trying to unify the colors. So as every so often, I'm going to take some of this and I am going to put it on the armor, the blade. And as this continues to lighten, I'll keep lightening some of the toenails and these things on the end here. And I can go even one more step lighter. And I'm going to throw some of this onto the blade just for the heck of it, because I want to make sure if I'm going to introduce this purplish color and I bring it into as many other spots as possible, I'm kind of leave that alone. Now let's throw a little bit of this. Now that it's getting that much lighter, throw just a little bit here on the edges of this, the straps here. And that's about as much for now as I want to add as far as lights go to things like the loincloth. And this is starting to dry out a little bit, so I take some of our kind of that was about the mid-tone light of the red flesh. I'm mixing in the brown. What I want to do is start to do some of the gauntlet, which means I'm going to mix in so some of the yellow, the U.S. Marine Corps. I've got a mixture like this, and let's start over here at the gauntlet. And start to work on some of these raised areas. And again, not a dry brush. And let's put I've got something that's even more green, more yellowish, and that is going to go here on this blade. Part of the reason I'm doing this is because this is supposed to be like a chaos type of thing here, and well, nothing indicates chaos better than some kind of a wild array of colors. And since I've got some of the purple on the blade, it forms a little bit of a complement to some of these yellows that I'm adding. Just a little bit there that's actually mixing together, utilizing that rounded. See how much paint there is, and you can see how this is kind of marbleized. That's something else that kind of comes from my regular painting experience, painting just two-dimensional art. A lot of times you would intentionally not mix the paint in the brush, just kind of let it be semi-mixed right off the palette and then throw it onto the miniature. So see this gauntlet, a little bit different color than that. Let's do the same thing over here. We're going to throw some of that yellowish green mix onto this armor pad. The same thing here on this sort of a buckle type thing. Definitely here. See how this is starting to get, things starting to get a little lighter. And I'm going to shift back to my other mix. but this is nowhere near your lightest light. It looks that way because you have some dark colors already out. And just like before, I'm letting some of this mix together. Now I'm going to leave this one alone for right now because I have some colors working here that are interesting. I'm going to take some of this ivory and mix that in some of the yellow. And now do another batch of color here on this gauntlet, and I'm moving the miniature back and forth. That's so I can utilize this filbert brush. See, I'm starting to be a little bit more careful now as far as what edges I'm trying to pick up of the raised surfaces. I don't do everything, I'm just going to do that much with it. See, all of a sudden there's a lot of shape starting to emerge there. We're going to do the same thing now on this armor pad. Into that buckle, and we need to do some on this sword blade here. But that's going to get too yellow, so I'm going to take some of that Marine Corps green and drag that across the surface to catch some lights. Let's go back to that Marine Corps green, except with a little verdigris, and right here. Just go all out and put some light here. And again, now that I look how much paint's on there, what I'm trying to do is drag this across. This has all these details sculpted in. Well, why should I have to do all the work? I'll let the brush and the paint do that work for me. Let those blend together. Now, I'm going to take that and the green, mix that together, and now I'm going to go after this shoulder pad. And the reason I am using a much cooler color is because what's in front of it, there's this warm color, just like here. What happens? The cool color recedes, the warm color comes forward, and that's a good thing because there's a lot of action going on in this little space here, and we need to kind of assist the viewer to get them through that spot. There's a little bit of a visual frenzy right there. I can go even more with the U.S. Marine Corps. Pick out even more of those edges. Let's even throw some of the white into that. Now at a certain point, if the paint that doesn't take any more paint, well, I could either use some flow improver or just kind of stop working here and move on to another area. And I'm going to do that here, throw some of this down onto that armor pad. And go back into some of that more yellowish mix. get some lights back. There we go. You can sense how this is starting to go just like we did for the wings. Building up that value pattern, but also altering the colors. So each one of these actually is a slightly different color. Even the blade is the same way. And what I'm going to do, I think in the next few minutes, I'm going to have to dry this off and continue. And that would be just continuing to throw some more of these lights, making sure to get as much variety as possible. So let's do some of this right here. And let's see, this pad here, I want to get some of the, a little more of the orangey flesh color into this. Now, obviously, if you're using metallic paints, it's going to be a little different result for you. But you can still mix regular paint and metallic paints. I've done that. That yields kind of an interesting result too. So here's some healthy amount of the verdigris. To hit some of these lightest lights. While I have this purple out there, remember we want to do a little bit purple on the face. I will be introducing one other color on the palette for things like the tongue and the gums, just to get it a little bit more, get some extra punch to the red. Yeah, I just took some of this purple here. And I'm just making the face lighter right now. Nothing terribly fancy. But notice how I leave that original orangey red to show through. And I'll reflect some of this. I want this to get elsewhere, so it's going to go on some of these armor pads too. On this side, up over here, on this side of this pad. On these little nails on the top of the wing, definitely. I'm going to hit some of these fingernails. Put a tiny bit on the toenails here. While I'm down here, I make some of that purple in with my cavalry brown, essentially the basic red for the flesh tone. Remember how we talked about making this part of the feet here a bit on the cooler side as far as our reds go, and that just did it. You can see compared to that orangey red, very different. And that orangey red wasn't terribly, that was not a super saturated color either. But by putting this even less saturated color next to it, see, here we go, even a little bit lighter. And this is, there's that untouched interior part of the wing that we need to do. After I let some of this stuff dry a bit, that is the next part that we will go after. And also some additional work on the face. We'll start to throw some lighter colors there as well. On big figures like this, on these big creatures, the shaded base coat part of it tends to really last a long time. On an average miniature, I don't spend anywhere near this much time. This is more complex. There's just more to it. So it makes the shaded base coat part last much longer. So now we're going to do the face we talked about and the inside of these wings. This is where we really start to show the back of the wings, front of the wings. So now we're going to work with this color set, and lots of, as you can see, purple. Less so as you work this way. But we're already just about there at the top. So what we're going to add in is some of this purple. So we go to the Imperial Purple. Let that mix in with some of the Cavalry Brown. And I just want to get some paint on the surface here. Probably going to have to throw more of the purple back out. And that's okay. So using the big brush, and in that surface covered, now to lighten that, what I started to add was a little bit of that U.S. Marine Corps. See how that's gonna, it's soft, it's subtle. But definitely a whole different ball of wax on this side. And that was just a little bit of the U.S. Marine Corps green. And because I threw in a little bit of the Cavalry Brown, that kept it, I think, from getting too bluish purple. And another round. Now this is really supposed to be a shadow area, so I'm not going to do too much of this. It's really just enough to tint it this color. There will be a few parts of the wing that are brighter than others. Say this right here. Maybe leave these alone, but let's make some of these stand out a little more. Some of these ridges right here. And on this side, let's turn this over and do something similar here. Still not doing a dry brush. Plenty of paint on that brush. It's the type of brush stroke that we're using. This kind of feathered brush stroke with that soft tip. And I think I only have maybe one more round of making this lighter, and that's gonna be about it. Don't want to take this too far. Because this is really more of a reflected light sort of thing, or maybe even showing a tiny bit of translucency in the wings. But you saw how I didn't, never washed off the brush. I maybe got some extra liquid, but that was about it. Because I was trying to make sure that those colors, you know, that's one way to keep your colors from getting too kind of crazy. Really not much other words I can use for that. Let's talk about a new color that I added. This is transparent red from Vallejo. It's a pretty intense, kind of a pinkish red. And that's what I am going to introduce now especially for tongue and for some parts of the gums. I'm going to get a smaller brush here. And just throw that on the gums. Lighten that up a bit more. If it gets too cold of a pink, I throw a little bit of yellow in there. We will be throwing the glaze over this tongue, so I don't have to worry about getting everything just right at this point. But I do want to get some of these lights in here. This is pretty much the only time you're going to see me use anything resembling white to brighten up or lighten up a red. Because here we're intentionally, we want it to be more pink. So some of the other details in the face, well, you can see there's kind of some purple in there. So let's try to put some of that in. That's why I wanted to leave some of the transparent red out, because if I put some yellow into that, that'll make it pretty intense. Let's make sure that this is in the camera view. Some of the horns need some brights too. And let's looks like, you know, like ears, hair, kind of a mane. Put some of that out onto his face. now I'm gonna change tactics a little bit. Remember that purple we were using on the wings? I'm gonna shift some of that to the face. And the whole reason to do this, why, just, I don't know, I thought this created a little more interest than just having his face also be the same kind of orangey red that all the rest of them, all the rest of the skin. I just thought, well, let's make that face stand out that much more. And since these colors are already on the miniature, they won't stand out hideously. It's another, just one more place we use that color. And while I'm gonna throw in some verdigris here. While I have some of that, I am going to throw some more, a few more lights down here on the toes. Kind of been waiting to get this color out on the mixed up. So some more lights on the end of the toenails here. Just on the tops of these ridges, because all the crevices, those are going to get lots of glazes. So now I'm going to start to pick out, while I have this color, a few other lights here, say on this loincloth. Go back to the face now that that's dried a little bit. And let's grab some of the yellow and some white. And I'm just gonna indicate the eyes for right now. That's going to probably get a little bit covered when we do the washes and glazes over the top of this, but I just want to indicate that for right now. And I don't want to focus too much on this armor, because maybe you're going to do yours in metallics anyway. And you can see how this starts to create some pop here and there. Maybe on this side, I wanted that to be a little more on the greenish side. Now I'm going to throw some verdigris into there. And onto this armor pad, maybe bring out a few of the teeth here, some of these ridges. Now, a lot of this is lighter than it's ultimately going to be, and that's fine, nothing wrong with that. Here I'm just throwing in a variety of colors, and as much to make it sort of chaosy than anything else. If you're gonna do something that's chaos, why not have some fun with it? And up here, some lights that are more towards the green, because again, we want that we want the warmer colors to show up more. And what I'll do is just kind of go around and just pick up some more of these edges. And in some of them you can't even see them on the camera because of the angle that I've got to hold the figure. So I'm going to do some of those that are kind of hidden down in the underneath here. You just can't see me working. I'm going to do some of those, and then it's going to be time to do that glazing that we've been waiting for quite a while. And it's gonna be an exciting part. And we do a lot of manipulation of our shadows. We've been manipulating the middle tones and the lights, but now we're gonna play around in the shadows. So now we get to the stage where we glaze. By glaze, I mean a very controlled wash. That's why we usually use a small brush like a liner brush, or even one of the number 8 rounds with a decent point on it. And to illustrate that, I'm going to do a little bit on some of the right hand side pieces here with these colors from Vallejo Black Shade, Secret Weapon Wooby, Sepia Shade from Vallejo back to Secret Weapon, some Baby Poop, that's for the armor and for the horns. And then some GW washes here, Fuegan Orange, Reikland Flesh Shade, Crimson, and Juichi Violet. So, what I'll do is with some of the more greenish colors like this, and don't be afraid to water some of these down. I'm going to set up some of the sepia. So these three, and don't be afraid to mix them together. I'm going to do a little bit of work here on this gauntlet. So I hold this so that gravity kind of does the work for me. Just adjust. All I did was set that down into the crevices, then wiped away the excess paint in the brush off on a paper towel and just let that sit. Now you could also use a smaller brush. Here's some of that ruby. Flip this over. So I've just changed the colors. This is now much more purple. So you can see a very dramatic difference on this side. And if this was just a wash where you take a big brush and you slap it on there, you're not going to get quite that effect. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to take this armor pad here and do something similar. So I threw down some of the black. I'm going to adjust it now. Just put in some of the baby poop here. As it moves over to this side, I'm going to transfer to sepia. Even a little of the ruby up here. And some baby poop. And also don't be afraid to wipe it away with your finger if you feel the need. So see, I can go like that, take away some of the excess. Now let's go to this upper shoulder pad. So again, with some of the baby poop there to make it a little more green. Now, adding a bit of the black mixed with the baby poop. But here in front, actually take some of the Druichi violet, mix that with the black. And apply that a bit more gingerly there, a little bit lighter. And a little bit of the black and the darks. So that starts to take care of, but again we've got some transition between our colors here from the the brown, a little green, then the black and purple mixed together. And that's what I like about Glazing Face. Here's some of that black and purple mixed together. And now we can put right here, but some sepia. Now, to create a little extra interest, back to my black and purple mix, but again, not wiping out my highlights. See, just letting that dark paint sink down into those crevices. So I can use my black paint here. Let's take on this part of the sword. Using the same principles. Kind of some sepia down on the end here. Let's change that to more of the black and let it sink down to that crevice, but then don't be afraid to take some of that away. Gonna go back to sepia up here, down to black here. Take away some for the details. There's that purple and black mixed together. Here on this part of the blade, I don't want to do too much here because again, this is not about non-metallic metal. This is more to show you light and dark. See, we left this alone. We didn't even do anything here. I can even put a little water here and even smooth that out some more. This is kind of a typical glazing exercise. See here on the end of this, not doing anything over here. It's all on this side. And just leaving that alone. Over on this side. Here. Now I've got the hand, which we're going to start out with a little bit of that Reichland Flesh shade. And start out with some of that. But then I'm going to take the Druichi Violet and some of the Crimson now. And as I reach the end of the fingers, put some more of that. In contrast, black mixed with some of the baby poop here. To the hilt of the sword blade. So much more dramatic shading there. Going to do some work on the face. And I'm going to take some of the black, mix with the violet, a little bit of the crimson here. Make sure I have some flesh shade and some sepia. Take the crimson right here and do some work on the tongue and also where the teeth are. the black mixed with some ruby for the interior of the mouth, out through the sides of the face here. A little bit around the eyes. Actually, I'm going to take some of that Fuegan orange. Carry that out towards the horn. This is the purple and the black mixed together. Back to some of the Fuegan. Now to sepia, and now I turn the miniature so that gravity can do a little bit of the work. Some sepia again. This is where we add and then subtract. I have a whole entire video on just glazing, and I do an awful lot of this. See, I'm adding, taking away. On this side, I'm going to use more of the black, even mixed with a little bit of the baby poop. Now, in here, this is sepia mixed with the black. Carry this down into the face. A little more of the purple and black mixed together. And just like I did everywhere else, see, I'm not even touching those highlights. I'm working around the highlights. That's why I've got this small brush. And I want the inner part of these toenails to be a bit redder. So I take some of the ruby, put that down in there. Need to do this part of the foot. So all of a sudden now, look, all this rich shadow all of a sudden. Again, I did this. I'm gonna leave it like this so you can see the difference between these two. This foot is gonna be exactly the same as this one. Not gonna be any difference. But I just work my way around that foot. Some of the purple and black to finish off that toenail. And you can do multiple layers of glazing if you want to. If you feel this is too bright, you can go in again. See how I'm kind of painting the negative space. I'm painting the around this part of the hair, not painting that, the hair itself, painting what's behind it. Doesn't even feel free to water down the glazes also. All I do is just to be able to change and transition one color from the next. I've got a somewhat bigger brush here, and going to work in some of the crimson here. And I'm starting up here, so I'm not affecting this yet. I'm starting up here. Gonna work my way down. Now start to add more of the purple. And I'm going to even put some of the black back out onto the palette here. carry this all the way down using gravity to my advantage here. Then wiping the brush clean. And you can see I'm just pulling away some of the excess. Got some of the Fuegan Orange and the Reichland Flesh shade. That's for up here. And this is the primary glaze that I use on the skin. See me use that up here. As it gets darker, see more of the flesh shade. But then some black and crimson. And again, you can use your finger, you can use a paper towel, use whatever. I just did some rather dramatic sweeping changes. Big difference between the two wings. Gonna go back into some of the purple and black to do these talons on the ends of the wings. Be hard to see just because the angle that I have to hold this. So what I'm going to do is try and do these other sections here. There's just not enough time to show every last one of these, because again, what we've done here is exactly what I'm going to do here, on the ends of these fingernails here. It's the exact same thing. Put some on, take it off at the end, put some on, take it off at the end, and just make this foot just as we did this one here. Just adding some darks. And every so often in the flesh tone, I'm not going to do a lot of this, but just see just a little bit in some of the darker crevices. It may not even need some, but if you feel you do, you can always add that in. So in this final segment of painting the Blood Demon, I'm just going to do pretty much continuing the steps that we've done all along here. And that is adding these successive glazes of these warmer colors like the sepia and the crimson, not just to the back of the wings, but also to the body itself, to the skin. It's just one successive layer after another. Now, obviously, we're working in a much more compressed time frame here. Had this been a competition piece, I would have spent anywhere between 30 to 50 hours on it. Normal time for something like this would be 22 to 30 hours, I would think. And here, obviously, this is not 22 hours of painting. That's another reason why I've gone more towards the glazing. You can see as I work on the horns and the face here, I can tint colors. That was originally kind of a bright purple, but now I've added more and more layers of other glazes to that and to the armor like you see me doing here. And what that means is I don't have to remember 10% of this color mixed with 20% of that. It's hard to remember that. What if those paint colors go out of style or they just get discontinued, that sort of thing. I don't have to worry about any of that because most of the color, as you can see, started out with simple shades in the shaded base coat phase, and I added more color by adding these glazes. Even around here in the armor, remember how light this was at the beginning. Same thing with the ends of these horns. If I feel like I want the ends to be darker, I'm going to take a mix of sepia and black and just add these successive darks. Not have to worry about, well, am I mixing this much black with this much brown? And say, you know what, I want this tip to be even darker. So I add a little bit more dark here. And to be able to remove like that, like you just saw me there, that's a very powerful thing. Now, obviously, this helps things go faster, but to me, I like the end result a little bit better because glazes are transparent and the light shines through these glazes, and in effect, it brightens your colors because you're working transparently. Light penetrates through these glazes and then illuminates the color underneath. So again, look at just in the last minute or two how much more shading I was able to add onto the horns just with a few simple glaze colors. Now I didn't want this to be an exercise in non-metallics, so I didn't do too much on the armor and the sword blade, but this can work with metallic paints too. Because just imagine there are some mithril silver, some really bright silver colors on that sword. Well, you can tint and shade those with glazes just like I'm doing here. You can see I go back to the black for some of these darker elements. Sometimes I mix in a little bit of the baby poop or the Reichland flesh shade. And it's just I can carry this as far or just stop right now. If this is something for your army, maybe this is good enough. If you want to go further, you can watch some more extra footage over the credits. Again, limited time frame, only so much is going to fit on a disc. So I had to cut things a little bit shorter. Now here on the bottom parts of the legs, just like on the inner portions of the wings, these glazes are somewhat cooler, more purple, or even purple mixed with black. For these shadow areas near the corners of the armor, it's mostly black. Again, every so often I reach into one of the other glazes to alter that shade. Because if it's always just black, always black, that's going to get very boring. By glazing and tinting, you can see, look at that. I've got four different glazes that I just mixed together to work these inner portions of the wings. And once again, this is going to be more of a cooler mix. Trying to emphasize the crimson and the purple. And just as I did on all of the other areas, I can water this glaze down. I can remove it with my finger if I want, preserving some of those lights that were originally painted as part of the shaded base coat. Just being able to swipe away the paint like that saves hours of blending time. Again, if this is a competition, I'm probably going to go over that area again. And you'll see in the 4 minutes or so, as the credits roll, I introduce some lighter colors, some mid-tones, just to try and increase the interest in those areas. And you can also, as you see me probably do on some of the other videos, you can mix regular paint colors in with these glazes. So I hope this was helpful for you when it's time for you to paint your own Blood Demon from Ultra Forge.
point where I can't go back. The sweet and scent is a liquid end, forcing my will now to be rebent. And the lights do gleam as if inside of a dream, here in my mind where it can all be seen. Hey!